something bad to us, we are going to do things to you that have never been done before.
What the f*** is that, dude?
Hello, folks. How are you tonight? I hope life, the universe, and everything goes very well on your behalf. I've had a couple of little shaky dramas just as we were about to kick off, so that's why we're a little bit late. I do apologise for that. I want to kick off tonight, before we get into Sean Ambrose, bring on the Larrikins. I want to bring up a song. You know how I love people with creative abilities. Well, one of us has many, many creative abilities, and he's been putting them to good work. So what I want to do is let everybody hear what he's been up to. And I'm looking forward to seeing your comments in the, funnily enough, the comment section. If you like this, we're very keen to keep pushing it. There's this track and there is another one that I might play you. And who knows, by the end of the show tonight, you never know what might happen. You might get a third out of us. And that will be a little bit different to what you're about to hear. So before we talk, let's and work. I think you're going to enjoy it. Watch this.
10 million strong hearts beating as one. This is a song from the heart. Australians stand together forever, back to back. It's a whisper in the wind, a beacon in the dark. This is freedom, and freedom is the reason to live. Freedom is the reason to stand. From the mountains to the valleys, it's people forged to paradise, the envy of all the world. From all the lands they came in search of gold, riches, and a new way of life. From the deserts to our oceans, we worked, we played, we loved every day. We plowed, we grow the food, we feed the nation. We were brave, humble in victory. This is Australia. We are true blue, we are mates and brother and sister, and there ain't nothing I won't do for you. We are one, we are Australians. From all the lands on earth we come. We are black, we are white, we are Australia. 100 years on, this is Australia. Freedom is a memory that some still have. Government wants total control. What you say, what you spend, where you can go, what we can grow. City folk making decisions affecting the farmers and their families. In governments, there are no more morals, no more ethics, just communist control. We are true blue, we are mates and brother and sister, and there ain't nothing I won't do for you. We are one, we are Australians. From all the lands on earth we come. We are black, we are white, we are Australia. We are one, and we will take back our common rights, our common. We will fight the evil. Win, yes, we win. This is Australia. No, we won't be conned anymore by your corporate lies and tactics of fear. Your time is finished. We have woken up to your game of fraud and deception. We turn our backs on your global system, from the states to the federal parliaments. We love our country, we love our way of life. We all now turn our backs to you and to your crap. This is Australia. No, we won't be conned anymore by your corporate lies and tactics of fear. Your time is finished. We have woken up to your game of fraud and deception. We turn our backs on your global system. From the to the federal parliament. We love our country, we loved our way of life. We all now turn our backs to you and to your crap. This is a song from the heart. Australians stand together, forever back to back. It's a whisper in the wind, a beacon in the dark. Beacon in the
Looks like our beacon's faltering a bit.
This is freedom, and freedom is the reason to live. Freedom is the reason to stand. This is a song from the heart. Australians stand together forever, back to back. It's a whisper in the wind, a beacon in the dark. This is freedom, and freedom is the reason to live. Freedom is the reason to stand. We are one. We are Australians. From all the lands on earth we come. We are black, we are white. 10 million strong hearts beating as one. This is a...
There you go. What do you think of that? 10 million hearts beating as one. 10 million Australian hearts beating as one. All right. I can see the galactic Larrikins sitting there in the room, and well, it's taking a rather dramatic turn. That isn't what I was looking for. That song was entirely written and produced and sung by AI. It did get some help with the words, and the author of the words was Tim Dwyer. So I just thought, we'll play that one to see what you think. Now, I'm not a big fan of AI and that sort of mechanized voice. However, at the end of the day, Tim Dwyer owns the rights to that song now. All we need is a real musician with a real voice, some people who can actually sing, and that would be amazing. So, the entire thing is created out of AI. I will play you on which one? That's a country rock one. One night we'll show you how it all works, but I'll play you another one before the night is out. All right, let's get into it. Happy Friday. I hope this is the end of your week. I ended mine with a headache like you wouldn't believe. Woke up with it, still got it all day, and and I've been looking for my patches, my X39 patches, and just found them right beside me where I've been sitting all day. Pardon me while I apply, if you don't mind. If you don't know what the hell I'm talking about, X39 patches are a light wave patch, which works on the infrared bits of your body. I've just put that basically at the base of my neck. And, well, let's take note of the time, 16 minutes to 7. I reckon by 7 o'clock I won't have a headache anymore. So, but if you see me squinting, it might be because the bright lights and whatnot are sort of making everything throb just that little bit deeper. Now, go easy. All right, let's get into the talking part. Tonight, I've invited Sean Ambrose back for a bit of a chat about something that he has been doing on our behalf, as much for anybody else, for, well, quite a while. I'll bring him on and let him talk about exactly what he's trying to do and help find out. G'day, Sean. How are you, mate?
Good evening, Carl. How are you?
Yeah, good. I saw you bumping along to the song, mate. You look like you didn't mind it too much.
Just incredible that it's written by AI.
Yeah, isn't it?
It's unbelievable.
Yep, the entire thing. And written in produced in about 30 seconds.
It's scary stuff.
Yeah, it is very scary stuff. I'll play one a little later that'll wake people up. It's not quite country rock. So, mate, we've all heard about freedom of information requests. Sometimes we hear that they've been beneficial and people actually get some information, but more often than not, we hear about freedom of information requests, and if anything is returned, it's redacted, and all you get is pages of black and bullshit. Turns out you didn't even get that far. Can you explain to folks what exactly you approached the government for and the details of with your first freedom of information requests?
Yeah, so, Carl, as you know, I've done quite a number over the last few years. One of the ones that was heavily redacted was in regard to Bill Gates having met with Anthony Albanese. You may recall that meeting. What
Yep.
I got back was just all redacted. But so, you do have wins, and there are times you just get nothing back. So the most recent one that I've got that's still active at the moment relates to Section 44 of the Commonwealth of Australia Constitution Act 1901. Now, for those who don't or aren't aware of what Section 44 pertains to, Section 44 explicitly prohibits members of Parliament from having an allegiance, an obedience, or an adherence to a foreign power. So I made an FOI request to the Attorney General's Department seeking the government's own definition of a foreign power as defined by Section 44. So I also posed the question within the submission as to whether the United Nations, the World Health Organization, and the World Economic Forum would by definition constitute a foreign power. Now, I believe I'm quite adamant that they do. I further posed a question as to whether state premiers such as Dan Andrews, and I actually referenced Dan Andrews in the submission, as to whether state premiers are bound by Section 44. And again, I believe they are because we are a federation of states. So the Attorney General's Department wrote back about a month later. Well, sorry, first of all, they wrote back, acknowledged that they received the request. That's the standard procedure. About a month later, I received further correspondence from them stating that they identified 1,500 documents that fell within scope of my initial request. However, due to the time it would take and the burden and the cost and all the rest of it, they weren't going to process it. They blatantly refused. However, they couldn't refuse unless they first offered consultation. So I accepted the consultation without the minister's assistance. Now, this is where it gets interesting because the minister is supposed to assist you with consultation in regard to revising the request and making it work, so to speak. So I revised the request off my own back. I streamlined it and I focused upon the United Nations and whether Dan Andrews and state premiers would be bound by Section 44. About a month later, they write back, we've now identified 275 documents that fall within scope of your revised request. However, we're not processing it. Here are your options. So I then had to, I just followed the process, took them up on an internal review. They wrote back and they said, well, sorry, we're upholding the decision. Here's your further options. So it now sits with the Office of the Information Commissioner. And this has been just over 12 months now. So, I mean, Section 44, it's quite, it's quite serious. There have been members of Parliament that have been expelled from the Parliament because they've been in violation of Section 44. I mean, even having dual citizenship is enough to disqualify them. And they can actually be fined. An ordinary citizen can take a constitutional matter pertaining to Section 44 to a competent court and sue a member of Parliament if they believe that they are in violation of Section 44. And the penalty is about £100. It's still listed in pounds, £100 per day that the member of Parliament sits whilst being disqualified. So I believe that the United Nations, the World Economic Forum, and the World Health Organization would by definition constitute a foreign power. So this is what I've been pursuing over the last, it's about 15 or 16 months now. And
so now that the Information Commissioner has ruled, if you like, in your favour and has hand-passed it back to the Freedom of Information Department, they have sat on their hands and done absolutely nothing. So you've been through the entire system. Now they're just going to ignore you. Do you have a valid path back to the information commissioner to force them to act, or like what's the next step?
Well, this is just it. Dealing with bureaucrats. They're not the most productive people. One of the options is that you go to the federal court, you initiate a legal challenge, but of course that costs money and it's time consuming. So I want to get this matter dealt with as quickly as possible, because I believe that once we force the government either have a definition of a foreign power, and the Attorney General's Department is the highest legal office in the land. They should have a source document in their office, and it should be just a matter of saying, "Oh, well, this is the definition of a foreign power. Here it is." Not, "Well, we're not giving it to you." I think they don't know what it is, and I think they want to redefine the definition of a foreign power because of everything that they've been up to over the last 3 years. Particularly in regard to the UN agenda.
I guess it's not just the last 3 years. It's God knows, the last 50, 70 years or more at least, where our government has been conspiring against the people and working for foreign interests. Pardon me coughing. So how can we help, Sean? How can we help apply pressure in the appropriate way and to the appropriate department to come forward with the information you've requested?
So I would look. One of my suggestions, Carl, would be to that we write. I'll provide the reference number for the FOI request. So it's FOI. I'll just put it in. It's FOI. I'll put it in the comments. FOI 23. Oh, hang on. What have I done? Hang on. Well, FOI 23296. So I'm just going to. I'll post the reference number. But what I suggest people do is that they write to their federal member of parliament, and they spell out that they are aware that there is an FOI request has been made pertaining to the definition, the definition of a foreign power. Pertaining to Section 44 of the Commonwealth, and it has to be referred to in its proper sense, okay, in its proper title, the Commonwealth of Australia Constitution Act 1901. I would also see, not just the Australian Constitution, because we know there's a corporate government, and then there's a lawful government. So I would suggest that we write to our federal members of parliament. I would even CC the Attorney General's Department in the email. And it's not just a matter of firing off an email. Anyone can fire off an email. And unless you follow up with a phone call to your member of parliament, you won't get traction. So again, send off the email, follow up with a phone call to your member of parliament, ask them inquire with them that they've received the email, then ask the person, the staffer, can they follow up on the email? And of course, you could even phone the Attorney General's Department directly. That would be another avenue. His number,
and they'll have a direct email line as well, if you email address as well. Info probably.
They would. So I think both strategies. Sending off an email to your federal member of parliament, inquiring about FOI request, 23/296, and then following up with a phone call to your federal member, and then also calling the Attorney General's Department and stating that you are aware that an FOI request was made over 12 months ago, seeking the definition of a foreign power, and that the matter now sits with the Office of the Information Commissioner. It is a matter of public interest, and the caller could actually say that they believe that our nation is under the dictate and duress of foreign powers. What is the definition of a foreign power? And I think if we get enough people asking this question and raising and generating enough interest in the matter, sure, they'll buckle. I mean, I've heard rumours already that they are seeking to, in regard to foreign interference, that they're trying to do something with foreign interference, and they're quite panic-stricken about it. I suspect that they're going to try and redefine.
I'm thinking what they're going to try and do is change that definition from, if you like, the correct version to the corporate version, which will somehow try and let them off the hook or gain them some leverage. So we can't let that happen. Thank you, Sunflower, for putting all this in one thing so everybody can just take a picture of the screen, and this is how you should be quoting, what you're going to say in your email. This request has been in for over 12 months, and they're just sitting on their thumbs. We feel that a bit more action, if they know that a lot more people are waiting for it than just Sean, maybe it will pressure them into doing the right thing, or at least it will expose just how blatantly they're going to continue ignoring us, hey, mate?
Yeah, exactly. And look, I think obviously, Carl, the next part of the process is that once we get the government's own definition of a foreign power, then we use it against them. And the purpose being is so that we can derail this whole putrid agenda that we've been subjected to for the last 3 or 4 years with the COVID lockdowns and the mandates and that, but ideally to get our country back.
Yeah, absolutely, to get our country back and have something of our nation's commonwealth left for our kids, our grandkids, and those that come after. That should be one of the guiding principles in what we're doing. Mate, thank you very much. You're welcome to stay on if you so desire. I'll bring in the Galactic Larrikins.
Yeah, I'll
very patiently in the background. Or at least
G'day, Sean. G'day, Carl.
G'day.
Yes.
Gentlemen, lovely to see your smiling faces. It must be cold on top of that hill. Bradford, you've got the beanie on, and Bear, well, it's just unfortunate that's your hair, not a bad beanie.
Yeah, she's been very cold. We've got the southerlies blowing in at the moment, so it's been very, very nipply. Very.
Been a bit wet in parts of Queensland too. Have you been copping it up your end of the world?
Yes, unfortunately, it's put a halt to our roadworks that we had our Sean digging for us.
All right.
Yeah, that's a bit of a bummer. He got started, did one day, extended our road a little bit further down the hill.
Yeah, got to the bottom of the gully.
Yeah, got over the big. We had a big, almost like a cliff that he had to get down. So he's been sort of cutting bits out of the side, dumping it, dumping it, and sort of gradually creating this a ramp down this, basically a cliff sort of thing, hugging the side of the steep, what do you call it, hillside.
Yeah.
And did a great job one day, and then next day it decided to start raining.
Mm.
So
he was very lucky. He just said,
that's why they made the big bucks.
Again?
Back going again after you blew it up.
Yeah. He'll be getting his Bobcat back probably next week, hopefully. And when he does that, then we'll be fixing up the roads around here. We've got a few potholes, and some of the areas have been washed out a little bit. So he's going to clean all those up, put some nice, hard, compact road asphalt surface on it so that the guests can easily drive in and out and park right outside their little cottages.
Right.
Yeah.
That sounds very spectacular. How long before we have the grand opening, do you feel? Rain notwithstanding.
Well, we've sort of picked out the 17th as an interesting date that we might open.
As a date. Have you assigned a
again?
month to the end of that, or is 17 just a good day?
This month, 17th to the 7th.
Oh, this month. Oh, very
Yeah.
good.
Yeah. So we'll have the two, touch wood, we'll have the two trains fully renovated by then. So we'll have new kitchens in both the train cabins, and we hope that we've finished painting it today. I did some spray painting yesterday, and I had it turned up a little bit high, so it sort of spattered instead of sprayed. So it made a bit of a mess. I had to sand it and give it another spray in today. But it's looking great because it's an oil gloss. So the roof of the train is like tongue and groove. Yeah, tongue and groove. And it was painted with oil paint before, so it's got that sort of nice enamel. It got that nice gloss look. Or did. It was a bit sort of faded, but now it's just like a mirror. It just looks it's beautiful. Yeah.
And
so we're getting there. Yeah.
I'm voting for. I think we should have like a soft opening and then like a hard opening and as many sort
Everything's
of
frozen up at my end.
Say again, Carl.
I'm voting for, and that was it. It could be me that's freezing, nobody else.
I said I think we should have a
soft opening. Go on.
I think I like from Ocean's 11. We need a soft opening. Have a party for that, and then like a hard opening, have another party, and then an official opening, and then an official opening,
and then an official opening. That sounds like 3 weeks I'll be staying at your place.
Yeah.
Oh, mate, you've been saying that for 6 months, mate.
Yeah.
I remember you saying you're going to come up and help us unpack.
I know, but elements are keeping me here for different reasons. But I can explain that when I see you.
Fair
Boys, I want to bring this little thing that I saw today up and get everybody's comment on this. The new Governor General for Australia, Samantha Mostyn, is married to a barrister named Simeon Beckett. Simeon Beckett just happened to be on the council for Bill Heffernan's Royal Commission inquiry, the same Royal Commission that found there was a list of 28 pedophiles from high-ranking police officers and the former PM on that list. He was also involved in the Royal Commission in which Gladys Berejiklian appeared and later resigned from the Parliament and disappeared up her fundamental orifice. So everybody might have been scratching their heads to figure out why this Moss chick got the Governor General's job. Copper of such significance that you would think even the Labor government might be embarrassed to admit. But oh no, nothing of the sort. They're just going to plow on regardless. They're handing out the money to themselves left and right. So the Governor General is in for a $200,000 plus pay rise a year, taking her up to the vicinity of $208,000, in line with what the Chief Justice gets of the High Court. However, could we be looking after two people here who've done the government great service over the years? I don't know what this guy, his role was during the Heffernan Royal Commission. It would have been a fairly junior role, I would have thought, given he didn't qualify for the bar, I don't think, until the early 90s. So, I think it's a bit interesting. What are your thoughts?
I wonder if it's got anything to do with the Canberra standards, and they've worked out, and they think maybe it will appease them, and they might go away if we have someone who's actually got something to do with it. Don't know, or maybe
they go away.
They couldn't do the job after the protesters are going, so they had to rise, give them a pay rise and say, "Come on,
someone do it,
someone do it."
So somebody hold their hand up and at least say something about it, rather than don't know anything about it, can't find any documentation about it. One of the senators said when questioned about it, well, clearly there's a ton of evidence that was available. If it's not now, then stop. You can't find it now. Shouldn't be the way forward, you should be asking, well, why can't I find it now? Because it clearly did exist. Where has it gone? I'm not sure that anybody in that place is actually asking those questions yet, but hopefully they will be in the not too distant future. Sean, you've been close to the 28 argument. What's your thoughts?
Yeah, there's a mass. My view, Carl, is that there is a mass cover up. This new Attorney General, she's just part of the, she's just part of the whole outfit, the whole apparatus. They bring them. This classic corruption. What they do, they bring them in, look after them, pay. They get a good gig. No different from some of these, union jobs. They bring you in. They look after you. You get paid, and they hope that those people don't open their mouths. 98% of the times they don't. They're just part of the machinery. But this Section 44 request, Carl, this Governor General might be pushed into play, and she might have to do something. Yeah,
and that's the thing. Do you think there's part sacrificial lamb in this appointment?
Yeah, it could be. That of course is another option. I certainly wouldn't discount that, particularly given that her salary has been increased. $250,000? It's just absurd.
Yeah.
Completely absurd.
And it's could they make it any more obvious to us? I mean, they could slap us in the face with a wet fiddy python style, I suppose. But could they make it any more obvious, any more blatant that they could not give a shit about you, your family, your job, or your mortgage, which I'm tipping next month is likely to be raised again when the Reserve Bank sits and looks at interest rates, given that inflation has taken a 0.1% jump up. And, well, we'll get into the supply and demand of housing here in Australia and the way that the country is essentially ramming that supply and demand. Thousands of immigrants from places that are not in general alignment with Western values, let alone Australian values. And I remember the big immigration drive. Sean, you will too, probably you two boys, the drive of immigration in the 80s. The Vietnamese were coming over by the boatload and turning up. But we were looking for, diverse groups to come and be part of Australia. But the theme was, come and adopt Australia, become Australian. Don't bring your shit to us. Leave it all where you are. Come and be one of us.
Yeah, exactly. I remember that.
Yeah,
I remember that. And they did,
Yeah.
And all that.
Yeah.
Carl, I get coffee every morning from a bakery here in Helensburgh, a Vietnamese bakery. Beautiful people. They love Australia. They fled communism. They fled communism. The Vietnam War had happened, and they had to get out because of the oppression. So they come to Australia. One of them was on the boat. Was a refugee on the boat.
Yep.
They made it to Australian waters. So he became an Australian. He went through a process, but then he brought his wife out. And the rest of the family, but they all assimilated. They got a bakery here in Helensburgh. They do great business. They work every day. They don't stop Christmas Day. They don't stop Easter. They just keep going every day of the week. Yeah. Beautiful people, and they love Australia.
And there's so many other races that have come to Australia with that same work ethic. The Polish immediately spring to mind. I mean, how many bloody Poles have we got here? And talk about work, Greeks, Italians. However, we are importing people at the moment who are coming from countries of varying degrees of poverty. We're bringing people from parts of Africa where all they've ever known is how to fight for anything they want. They've never had a government supply them anything. And so while they get here and the government supplies them everything, but maybe not what they want. And that's why we're seeing such a rise in ethnic or immigrant crime in Australia, because these people take what they want. That is how they've grown up. That is what their culture has been. In many cases, I'm not suggesting the Indians are too much like that, although the culture with the Indians coming over here is it's middle-class Indians who are much wealthier than middle-class Australians. Maybe we should be asking the question how, when there's 1.2 billion Indians and probably 1 billion of them are below and living in abject poverty. Why all of a sudden are we getting the money-making Indians able to come to Australia, walk in and pay cash for a house, driving our housing prices up through the roof?
Carl, it's I think
But
it's a lot like
we have no problem, our government, selling our land to foreign nationals here. In fact, I was reading some figures not long ago where there are over 10,000 houses in this country that are vacant, owned by foreign nationals that have not had anybody in them for years. They just hold the land.
Yeah, it's disgraceful.
Yeah, absolute disgrace. But what does our government do about it? Absolutely nothing. What would happen, do you think, if we had a group like My Place put in charge of that? All those vacant homes.
Fix the homeless problem, that's for sure.
But the importation of very rich immigrants, doesn't matter where they're from, whether it's South Africa or India or Pakistan or whatever, China, that's how the government is paying its bills. It's literally importing. And I said, it costs for, we have some friends of my dad's who are South African, as in white South Africans. They'd immigrated here a long time ago and they just got their family to immigrate over here. And it cost them a fortune to actually go through the process. And then, they turned up here. They're not allowed to go to capital cities. So where did they move? They moved to the Sunshine Coast because that's classified as regional. And then they commute to Brisbane. They paid $4 million for a house on the Sunshine Coast. Now, these aren't poor people. They're extraordinarily wealthy. And this is how the government is paying the bills. We don't get... So instead of it's
bizarre, isn't it?
What we should be doing, we have enormous natural resources. We are the largest supplier of natural gas in the world. We're fighting between Australia and America as the largest supplier of natural gas in the world. We've outdone Qatar and Norway and Saudi Arabia. And an example, Qatar and Saudi Arabia each get close to about $90 billion a year in royalties for their gas. How much does Australia get? We sell more than Qatar, $500 million. Qatar gets free education, free housing, free medical. They don't pay any tax at all, no stamp duty, nothing, no tax at all. They can afford all of that, but yet somehow we can't afford anything. We can't afford housing. We can't afford anything. And we have to import all of these millionaires to try and pay our bills. What we need to do is stop the importation and just start charging the big corporations royalties.
Yeah. I mean, I remember hearing 30 years ago that people who lived in Alaska used to get a royalty from the oil sales.
Yeah.
That's been going on.
They still do.
Yeah.
I think they do in Norway as well.
Yep. And Finland.
Norway, Finland, Iceland, all these ones. So I think it's time that we pick our battles, and yet there's some really, the 28 pedophiles, all that sort of stuff. It's fabulous, but it's not going to really attract the normies because you're never going to get traction with it. But something like the housing crisis and us not getting the royalties that we deserve, which would pay all of us and actually get us a higher standard of living, that's something that everybody can rally around, and we could actually get, the normies involved and actually get somewhere. So I think this is the opportunity that we have to try and find a common cause. What was the old thing? about like an alien invasion would basically, I think it was Reagan or someone said, you know, if there was an alien invasion and that would bring everybody together. Well, this is something that maybe that all of these different parties, like the freedom parties, but also getting the normies in together is concentrating on the housing crisis, the inflation crisis, and the fact that Australia does not get any of these royalties. It was our politicians that sold it out. The main one was, or main few, literally devised this ridiculous policy or laws, which what it is that any corporation can take our gas. If they sell it in Australia, they have to pay royalties to us. But if they sell it to overseas, well, then they don't have to pay any royalties. So we're now almost in a situation, this is just absolutely crazy, where all of our gas is contracted to Japan, China, a couple of these ones. And they're now saying, oh, we've got a gas shortage, and we're going to have to buy our own gas back from the Japanese at a premium. I mean, this is how ludicrous it's got. So instead of like focusing on some things where we're really struggling to get some traction on, we should be focusing on these ones which are really going to, you know, get any Australian jacked up and starting to get actually motivated. That's what happened with it when we had the lockdown protest, the million odd people in Canberra. It was because there was enough pain and there was enough interest and something that could actually get us together. The next thing which would hopefully get us together is the housing crisis, inflation, and the fact that we've been just completely ripped off on these royalties.
I'd actually like to see everyone get back to Canberra. But before we do get back to Canberra, let's at least have a battle plan. These are the issues. You know, these are the issues that the cost of living is just unbelievable. Mm-hmm. You go to the supermarket. You know, you go to the supermarket, you go to the petrol station, and you just pay through the arse for it. I don't know. I actually don't know how people are surviving. I go into Sydney every week. I get off at Martin Place, and the amount of homeless people that I see at the train station is just unbelievable.
Mm. It's crazy. I mean, I will never be able to buy a house now. The way that they keep on bringing another million migrants in a year who are far wealthier than all of us, and they're driving up the price of housing. So that's all of us out. We'll never get anywhere. Yep. So it's time, and there's enough pain, hopefully, on these issues, the housing, inflation, and, you know, if people become aware of, hey, we're getting ripped off on this. We should be the richest country in the world. None of us should be paying tax, or it should be free healthcare, free education, all of these things, and subsidized housing, the rest of it. That's hopefully an area where someone, you know, enough of the population is feeling enough pain that they might actually do something. Yeah, I mean, I'd love to think that the pedophile, the 28 names and the pedophiles would drive interest, but it's not. It's not something where people are feeling enough pain that they're actually going to get out and do something. But these other issues, particularly housing, inflation, those things, there's enough pain now where hopefully people will start going, yeah, enough's enough. Come on, let's protest. Let's hold the government to account as best we can, of course. But you know what I mean? That at least there's we've got these issues, and we should have learnt from Canberra. People have to be feeling enough pain to actually do something. And the only issues at the moment where there's enough pain is housing and inflation. And if people were made aware of how much we are being ripped off by these corporations, then maybe people will actually stand up.
I think it also comes back to, you know, with the issue of housing, you know, the cost of living and mortgages. I think one of the main issues is that we need to get back to a publicly owned bank.
Yes, couldn't agree more.
And start actually building, you know, the government building houses. Our biggest problem is property developers. Property developers pay off the politicians, so they're the ones who build all the houses and make all the money. But let's go back to how it used to be back in the 70s, where the government built houses and then sold them off at reasonable prices, and everything was done reasonably. Start releasing more land, start building more houses, and actually release them. But right now, like everything, there's so corruption, everything's corrupt. It's the huge property developers that, you know, Stockland, all these sort of ones, who control it. They pay off the politicians, and then they make sure that they've got the monopoly on it all, and then drive the prices through the roof. again, I mean, I'd love to see like foreign investment in our domestic in our real estate band, but that's probably a harder sell at the moment. But certainly, there's got to be better ways. There's got to be something that we can all get together behind, and I think the housing crisis is it.
Yeah, but how do we finance and fund the construction of new homes? The way to do that would be with a people's bank.
Easy, by getting our royalties from our gas or all of our resources, but it's particularly
and our coal and our ore.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If Qatar
yeah, I agree exactly with what you're saying with resource tax. I mean, you might remember when Kevin Rudd, I thought that was the greatest policy announcement ever when Kevin Rudd announced the resource tax. Greatest policy initiative ever. He got killed. He got cruelled for it. It was still the greatest policy initiative ever, but he got cruelled for it. It's one thing to say, yeah, we're going to have a resource tax, or you're going to put all that money and revenue into these scumbag banks, into all these privately owned banks who are screwing us anyway. It has to be put into a people's bank, and the people's bank has to have a charter, and the charter has to stipulate this money. You know, what do you call it? Like a kind of ethical clause. You know, where the money is used for the common good.
Mm.
Well, it's not used to finance scumbag executives and, you know, pay $1 million salaries. It's there for the common good and to rebuild the nation.
Agreed, like a sovereign wealth fund. But we've got examples of, again, like Norway, Iceland, Qatar, all of these different places. They do that. Alaska, all of these places. There's plenty of precedents and models around the world that we can just easily borrow or take the best points out of each of them. So I don't think that bit is the sticking bit. It's really just, again, getting the knowledge out there and then trying to rally people around it. Trying to get all of the different freedom groups, but basically all of the punters aware of what's going on and then having some sort of a plan. And the best plan is, let's get the royalties for our resources. It's our gas. Our politicians have sold us out, and these corporations get to take all of our gas and sell it overseas, and we get nothing. Well, that's
In
just
some cases, they give it away as a bonus, as a trade bonus. We'll give you our gas in return for your trade in other areas. So they're essentially getting it offshored for the cost of getting it put on the boat and sent over. That's the only cost that places like Japan are paying.
Yeah. And then they're going to on-sell it back to us at a premium.
Yeah.
If you watched Tucker's last speech in Melbourne, which was excellent, because as he said, he was going the next day, so he didn't care. He was calling it all out, and he said, "This is crazy. Why are you putting up with this? This is absolutely insane."
The problem is people don't know. We know all this stuff, and that's great, but the general public have no idea about all this.
Mm-hmm.
So how do you tell them? I mean, the mainstream media is corrupt, so they're not going to find out by their most. That's all they watch.
Mm-hmm.
So
we need to start doing more social media actual channels which are aimed to the normies. Get away from all of the really fringe conspiracy, or not conspiracy, but the fringe sort of stuff like the 28 named pedophiles. All you're going to do is divide people. It's you'll lose the audience. But if we can start actually developing some independent media channels which aren't attached to any of that and just focus on stuff that the normies will pick up. There's, whether it's podcasts like Joe Rogan, etc., they can do it. He can do it. He can apply, appeal to the normies and still talk about all sorts of different things. But like I said, we don't do ourselves any favors when we concentrate on the absolute fringe things, which then a lot of the normies, it's over their head. As you said, like they don't do the research into that. They're not interested, and you've lost them. If you actually want to make a difference, you have to appeal to the majority of Australia and get them educated. And to do that, you have to, appeal to them and what they're actually going to see and do and watch. Follow the rules, and let's get out there. But if you keep focusing on all of these fringe issues or these very narrow things where you're going to lose most people. Well, yeah, okay, yeah, we were right. So what? No one's listening to you. So if you really want to change Australia, you have to appeal to the normies and actually start making a difference.
Yeah, I would agree.
Yeah,
Speaking
agreed.
of the normies, one of them's just joined us, Tim Dwyer. And when I say
Yeah,
normie, he's very normal. He's very normal for a man who is exceptionally creative in many, many ways, from hydrogen right through to song creation. Thanks for joining us tonight, Tim.
Hey guys, how you doing?
Played your 10 million Aussie hearts to kick off the show tonight.
Oh, did you really? Thank you, mate. That's lovely. And you've still got people on?
Yes, it got a big reaction. People loved it. So I've had a link with it tickering across the bottom of the screen on your Rumble channels. If people haven't found Tim's Rumble channel yet, it's called Tim's Truth. And you'll find a couple of songs, another one of which I might play in the not too distant future. We've been talking all things Constitution, Tim, and Sean in particular has been working a Freedom of Information request along the lines of defining what is a foreign power under Section 44 of the Australian Constitution, and what that definition is. I'm betting you've probably got it sitting in front of you somewhere.
Yeah, mate, I've got it sitting right here in the big book.
Yep.
Right, so, yep. And it's really interesting. What was the response you got to the FOI?
It was basically it was too onerous, laborious, too costly.
Yeah, too close to the truth.
Yeah,
too destructive to the system.
So they told me they had identified 1,500 documents that fell within scope of my initial request, and they were flatly refusing it, but they couldn't refuse unless they first offered consultation, which I accepted. That consultation normally comes with the minister's assistance. I never received that. So I revised the request under my own steam, streamlined it, and focused on whether, and asked a question as to whether the United Nations would, by definition, constitute a foreign power as defined by Section 44, and whether state premiers such as Dan Andrews were also bound by Section 44. So they wrote back and they said, thanks for having revised your request, accepting consultation. We've now identified 275 documents that fall within scope. However, we're refusing to provide you with the documents. So yeah. I went through an entire process. Well,
Sean, let me give you a little bit of a heads up here. On a slightly different note, but still the same. A friend of mine in New South Wales has been fighting in the federal court his own issues. And the federal court judge, when he literally stymied the judge on constitutional issues, the judge basically said, that doesn't matter, I'm ruling this way, right? So he appealed, of course, and his barrister and the barrister's legal team kept telling this guy, you're a nutter, you're a fringe lunatic, you're a constitutional idiot, you're a this, that, and everything else. So he fired them, and he then came across, through a series of events, a very, very senior barrister in Sydney, very senior barrister. And he got an hour with him, cost him $1 or $2. And he sat down and went through all this stuff, all the points he was trying to make in the court. And after about 30 minutes, the barrister said, look, I'll stop you right here. He said, every point you have made is absolutely correct at law. Absolutely correct at law. He said, but let me tell you something. The courts will never allow it through, because if it got through, it would dismantle their system. And this is where I think all of us find ourselves, that there is, I had a lot of documents done and put together as far as trying to go into the High Court just on Section 42 and 44. But it was never going to get legs. It was never even going to see the light of day in the High Court. Because if they rule on that, Sean, and everybody else listening, their system is finished. They've disqualified themselves. And so when we look at Section 44, bear with me for the sake of boredom, it says any person who is under any acknowledgement of allegiance, obedience, or adherence to a foreign power, or is subject to a citizen or entitled to rights or privileges of a subject of a citizen of a foreign power. Basically, they're disqualified. Now, Sean, you mentioned the United Nations. Australia is a signet, like the United Nations instruct the Parliament on policy. We pay them, God only knows how many $1 billion a year, and they tell our Parliament what to do. So the whole Parliament is under instructions from a foreign power. And then, of course, you've got the WHO, who is a foreign power. It has nothing to do with Australia, instructing Australia what policy to make, right? So by definition, every single aspect of our governance from top to bottom, and including the local government as so-called, because of the WEF influence in climate change, and the World Council of Mayors, is all foreign powers. And so for the Australian people, and this is, I think people are about sick of me banging on about the Constitution and oaths and all this sort of stuff, but in hope that a few extra people this week and a few extra people next week outside of my echo chamber, your echo chamber, might hear the truth, and it could ring a bell or two for them. We have to keep going. And so the simplest thing to understand is, from my perspective, now I had just this week, I had a guy in a political party get in touch with me and literally begged me to run for the Senate here in South Australia. I said, well, I can't do that. I will not throw my hat in the ring just to be engulfed by the bloody lions that are sitting on the other side. I won't do that, right? But trying to rely on our courts to fix our problem, I'm sorry. I personally, my own personal belief is that has turned into a fool's errand all but. We cannot rely on Liberal Labor. We've done Liberal Labor for the last 70 years, only to find ourselves here. There has to be a new way of thinking to handle this situation. And look, I love bouncing FOIs around on people because it stymies them up a bit. But when you can't even get a result out of an FOI, that makes it harsh, right? So Section 44 literally disqualifies every sitting member, Liberal, Labor, Greens, whomever they are, Teals, I don't care who they are. They are literally sitting in a treasonous position, or at least sedition.
So
at least
wouldn't that, or those labels, depend on the Constitution's definition of a foreign power? And can a corporate entity like the WHO or the WEF, or I suppose the UN is structured slightly differently. I would have put the WEF an arm of the UN, not something equal to it.
Yeah, possibly so. But here's where we bump into, you talk about the definitions.
Yeah.
Right. Again, it's my opinion, right? And look, opinions are like armpits. We've all got them, and sometimes they stink. And so if this is on the nose to you guys, I'm sorry, but it's just my opinion. In Part 1 of the Constitution, it says the legislative power of the Commonwealth shall be vested in the federal parliament, which shall consist of the Queen, a Senate, a House of Representatives, and which is hereinin after called the Parliament, or the Parliament of the Commonwealth. The Parliament of the Commonwealth. Now, if you look at everything to do with the federal government, it is the Parliament of Australia.
Yes.
We think we're going in using our constitution, but they're in the Parliament of Australia, like it's the Australian AEC, the Australian Electoral Commission. It's not the Commonwealth Electoral Commission, and so we're trying to apply rules of law to a body corporate that is not adhering to the rules of law. So therefore, they're acting under what's called the colour of law. Looks like the law, sounds about right, but it's all wrong. And so we get ourselves really in a tiz and angry because their definition of what we're talking about is different to ours. And we can't understand why they don't adhere to the law, because they finalised it in 1986 with the Australia Act. They stepped out and the states went with them. Everybody stepped out of the Commonwealth into the corporate Commonwealth. And as we all know, there's two Commonwealths. There's the corporate Commonwealth, which is separate by law to the Commonwealth, which covers the non-corporate Commonwealth. And so every aspect of government that's corporate, state, federal, the whole lot, is separate to our de jure Commonwealth. And so we're thinking down one track, but we're actually trying to talk two languages. And we're not getting a result.
I think Spiros once described the language that anybody who doesn't understand or has not any legal training, when you walk into a court and you try and speak to a judge, all he hears is gibberish. Because you are not speaking a language he understands. Legalese really is a language. And,
it is.
And as I've been saying, I think it's basically program one. Words mean things, folks. They are very important to know the definitions of words and how they are being used. And not just what you think the definition is, but in our case, we need to go and understand what the government's definition is, because that's probably different to the Webster's Dictionary version or the common sense version, which is, I guess, a little bit sad. We were also talking about the large influx of immigration coming our way at the moment, Tim, and Victoria has been leading the way in stupid decisions now for some time. I just want to bring this photo up. Dogs are banned, fires are banned, camping's banned, shooting's banned, and people are actually banned from this park. The only thing that's allowed to go in there is grass, birds, and God knows what. So with all these new people coming to town and so much of Victoria, under Parks Victoria, being cut off from access by human beings, where are we going to put these people?
Yeah, Carl, on big screen up here, and I could see on the big screen that it's actually littering. No littering, not no people.
It's
actually
no littering? Oh.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh.
All right.
There you go.
Well, that's
I'm only
okay.
looking at it.
No littering. Yeah.
Oh, okay. You're right. See, I thought he was having a piddle.
Yeah.
Well, the immigration, we don't have refugees anymore, right? There's no such thing as a refugee, right? They're importing a culture replacement program. Now, Pauline Hanson was right all those years ago. And unfortunately, what we've got is a culture coming into this country that is subservient by nature. The Indian culture and the Chinese culture are subservient to the government by nature. And we had some people here running we've already got NBN, but now they're running the fiber optic to the house. And these guys were Sri Lankans. And I got talking to one of the guys and he said, oh, yeah. I said, well, why come to Australia? He said, oh, well, we wanted to fight. We got sick of the communists in Sri Lanka. I go, okay. And anyway, we got talking, and apparently Fulton Hogan, who got the contract to do the job, they got the contract on the basis that they would bring in visa workers, not employ Australians to do it, so they could get the job on a cheap rate by bringing in the visa workers. Then I said to this guy, I said, well, okay. I said, so if you're here long enough to get citizenship or to be resident here, I said, then when you're able to vote, who will you vote for? Oh, he said, we must vote Labor. And I go, why? Oh, Labor bring us here. We must vote Labor. And I go, isn't that interesting? I said, you were sick of the communists where you came from, and now you come to my country and you're going to vote more communists into power. Yeah. And the look on this poor bugger's face was like, what? Labor? Communist? Absolutely. Yeah. Oh, no. He said, what am I going to do? I said, tell your friends.
Go home.
Go home. But the interesting thing here is this. Think about this. Here in South Australia, and it's probably the same all over the country, I don't know how many extra people we've got in this place, but the suburban sprawl everywhere, every town you go to has gone off its head. There's tens of thousands of new houses everywhere. The government's bringing in 2,000 people a day into this country, and we have no water. Our water supply has not been changed in 70 years.
Oh my God.
Now, we've had a bit of growth in that 70 years, and so now our water rates, you might as well go to De Beers and have an option on diamonds as to try and use water in this state. It is just so expensive. So therefore, what that does, everybody cuts back on supply, so it goes a little further. But think about the bloke trying to grow his veggies at home. Doesn't have a tank. Can't grow veggies.
Very interesting. I was only thinking about this the other day. So do you remember when they introduced bottled water?
Bottled
water, I think late 80s, I think.
Yeah. Late 80s, yeah.
And everyone thought this won't take on. No one's going to buy water.
Yeah, why would you buy water? Yeah. It's everywhere.
They do. And the reason I believe it was introduced was to put a price on it, but now it's like a commodity. It's like they're trading water, right?
Yep.
They're trading water, and you look at some of the scandals that there have been in this country where water is being stolen, where it should, it's supposed to be used for irrigation, but they're building dams and channels, and it gets funneled off down the river. They've basically turned it into a commodity and a costly one at that. And people now think, it's $4 for a 500 ml bottle of water. Of course, there's a value on it. People just accept it.
I find it amazing how water costs exactly the same. How can that be the same? One takes all this processing and all these different ingredients that have got to be shipped in from all over the place, and then they just put it under a tap and turn it on, and there you go. How can that be the same price? Or sometimes bottle more than the bottle of Coke.
Yes, that's right. But the interesting thing is, I can't remember what section in the Constitution, but water is a bridge to the land and cannot be separated. Water cannot, by law, be traded, sold, or bought, according to our Constitution.
Wow. How does a bottle of water cost more than petrol?
Petrol, exactly.
Well, perception of value, you see. I mean, we're that used to buying petrol, we just buy petrol. But we're going to buy a bottle of water. Oh, gee, we're buying good water. We're buying really good water. No, you're not. You're buying slop, just the same as what comes out of the tap. But I'll tell you a quick funny story many years ago, if you've got a second. I was a young lad. I was probably 16, maybe 15. 15 I was. And my dad had a property over near Dalesford, and we had a mineral spring on the property, and the mineral water would just flow out onto the ground 24 hours a day. And on the weekends, the Greeks and the Italians had come up from Melbourne, and they'd camp there all weekend bottling water. They'd load trailer loads of the stuff, right? They worked that little thing 24 hours a day, bottle. Anyway, I went to the bank and said, look, I want to borrow some money to put a bottling plant on the mineral spring. And he said, well, what do you want to put a bottling plant on your spring for? I said, well, all the Italians and Greeks are coming up to Melbourne. They come up and they take home thousands of bottles of water, right? I said, I figure I could bottle it for them and sell it to them. Well, the bank manager bloody near fell off his chair laughing at me. And he said, son, you want me to lend you, I forget how much it was, but it was a few $1,000s, X amount of dollars to put water in a bottle. He said, are you bloody mad? Right? And that was when I was 15.
Yeah.
Wow.
And bottle mineral water.
Wow.
So there we go. I guess he was a madman. Couldn't see it.
Tim, going back to what you were saying about we're importing cultures which are very compliant or subservient, to the government, as well as that, think of, as I was saying earlier, like most of the immigrants we're bringing in are exceptionally wealthy, and they're paying they have to go through a lot of trouble to go through the processes. It's very expensive. And then when they come here, they've got to spend millions of dollars on houses and all the rest of it. Do you really think those people are going to stand up against the government?
No, not at all.
They're not.
Not a snowball's hope in hell. But
No.
and what's actually happening, and I don't know. Don't get me wrong. There's a certain place for rockerism at its truest form, but the Australian culture, that which we grew up with, the culture that you see a bloke broken down on the side of the road, the first thing you do is you pull up and say, mate, do you need a hand? Right? Now, that culture is disappearing now, right? The neighbor moves into the house next door to you. The first thing you do is you go over and you introduce yourself and say, hey, look, if there's anything you need, give us a yell. I'm just here, right? I tried that a couple of times. Didn't work well for me. That culture is not accepted, and we find ourselves in a situation where when the Greeks and the Italians and the Dutch and those guys came out, they assimilated in, they fitted in. They'd go down to the pub and they'd, with their broken English, my wife's father was Dutch and he had zero English when he got here, and he used to tell everybody he had a motorbike and he'd park it in the shit because he forgot the difference between the word shed and shit, right? So he'd always put his bike in the shit. But they fitted in. They went to the pub. They joined in. We had, but you try and get into an Asian or a Indian or Sikh community and take them, although Sikhs won't go to the pub and the Asians don't go to the pub, and stuff like this. Our culture is being fractured, and so where all rebellion starts is in the pubs and the churches. They're all fractured. And so the community stays within the Chinese community. You only got to go to Redfern in Sydney. And, oh, my God, you'd think you'd walk straight into Beijing. You really would, right?
I know that the bureaucracy is filling up with Indians and Sri Lankans, and they are in supervisory positions, and they are being promoted to those positions deliberately. Some of them can barely speak English. Some of these people are responsible for handing out tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of Australian taxpayer dollars on a daily basis. And they are being deliberately, can I tell you that there is a process that you need to go through if you're applying for a job in a government department. It doesn't matter if you are the most highly qualified, if you have gone and done university courses, you've got degrees and bachelors out your wazoo. It does not matter. If you do not answer in the interview process in a fashion called STAR, okay, they ask you to answer questions with a STAR mindset. And the STAR, I forget now what STAR stands for, but it is strategic something or other, something. It's basically how you address every individual problem, or if a problem were to come up, how you would fix it. You are judged on your credibility or suitability for a job based on how you answer those questions. And those questions are best answered if you have blue hair, your nose pierced, you don't know whether you're a boy or girl, but think you're a they. If you answer any other way, you just won't get the promotion. It's that simple. They are engineering people into, and they'll give certain staff members those answers, if they think that they're not going to get over the line. And in fact, I know of a case very recently where one government department gave their entire staff the test and they all failed. So then they gave it to them again, but 24 hours beforehand gave them all the answers that were required for the test, and half of them still failed. People in control of our money and making decisions on our lives. One of the women in there had convinced her staff, and she was in a senior role. She had convinced her staff that she was actually an Indian brain surgeon serving time with the department until the government allowed her to go back to brain surgery. And it was only after she left the department that everybody found out she was full of shit. And these are the people in charge of what we're doing.
Yeah, I've seen it, Carl. I specialise in workplace health and safety, and I've seen basically what they're doing in WHS. If you know what the job entails, you don't get a go, and the people who do get a go are the Indians. So I went for a job in the fuel terminal. Would have been start of the year. I blitzed the interview. I had more qualifications than the bloke who would have been my supervisor, who was an Indian. Blitzed the question, blitzed the whole interview, and then was told that I didn't fit their profile.
Skin's not dark enough.
Yeah,
exactly. I should have got the charcoal. I should have got the charcoal out.
Well, got to walk a bit later.
There was a job here in South Australia where there was a whole new road crew, or road crew you'd call them, I suppose, had to rebuild a bridge, right? And the road is there and the road is here, and you've got to put a bridge between them. They started building one side of the bridge right at the far edge of the road. So if you can imagine, the road's here, so they start building the bridge here so as it's going to miss the road, but it was being built on an angle so as it reached the other side of the road. And the Australian guys that I know that were working there kept going, this is ridiculous, you got to do it here. And the Indian guy who was in charge, the project manager, he was, no, we do this is right. And he carried on and on and on. And in the end, one of the Australian guys, because they'd already put down a couple of piers, one of the Australian guys got in the backhoe and literally smashed the piers. And then they had to call the big boss out. So three big bosses came out, 2 Indians and 1 Australian. And they came out, and the 2 Indian guys couldn't see anything wrong. The Australian guy sacked the entire Indian crew because they were just there to stuff it up.
Yeah.
To literally stuff it up and cause more work. So then they get more work, the job goes longer and all the rest of the stuff.
Yep.
And he had to sack the whole...
That's how the NBN was rolled out around Australia. They gave it to the Indians and the Sri Lankans to look after and compartmentalized it to such a point that one bloke could turn up. He was capable of plugging two cables together, but he couldn't dig the hole where the cables had to be. So then you'd wait 4 weeks for the guy who could dig the hole to the cable turn up, and he'd turn up and dig a hole, but wouldn't have any cable because he wasn't the cable laying guy. You wait another 3 weeks for the cable laying guy to turn up, and he eventually turns up and says he could connect the cables, but it's not his job. You've got to get the bloke who turned up first to come and plug it in.
Because he started it.
That's a great segue, actually, to a great story that's just happened to. I'll protect their identity by saying a very good friend of mine, and she works for New South Wales Health, and she runs a department where all of her nurses do home visits. And currently, New South Wales Health is $150 million over budget. So I'll get to that, how they're going to try and save some money. But because, of course, the stupid climate change crap, New South Wales government have made a decision, or New South Wales Health have made a decision that their entire car fleet has to go to electric by the end of 2026. But they literally were told this a week ago. The fleet managers have then now, but an electric car costs 3 times more than what the cars they're using or what they normally get already. So how are they going to solve this? They're going to have 2/3 less cars. So now
2/3 less cars.
Yep. So it's going to cost the same, but they'll have 2/3 less cars. Now, this person who's running this department, where all of her staff are all nurses who go to home visits, she's going, well, how do my nurses get around? Their suggestion? Uber. Then she said, well, actually, according to your document, New South Wales Health and Safety for Health, they can't lift more than 5 kilos. So how are they going to they're going to put all of their equipment into an Uber, get to this address, take all of their equipment out of the Uber, then take all of the equipment into the home, but they can't carry more than 5 kilos at a time. And then they've got to do all that in reverse. Now, she's tearing her hair out because they're not giving her any answers. But when are they starting it? The vehicles have to be by the end of 2026. They announced this last week. And yesterday, the nurses are starting to get calls from fleet managers saying, you have to return your car next week. So now none of them have got vehicles and they've got to go to Uber.
Oh my God.
And the people that they're caring for are babies.
A baby. Yeah, they're midwives and it's all early, like baby sort of stuff. Yeah.
This is where.
And then, as I said, they're $150 million over budget. So how are they going to save some money? The managers who go around and doing this, they need their laptops. So they've been given SIM cards in their laptops so they've got access to the internet. Oh, you're overusing your internet. So they've taken all the SIM cards off the managers. So they now can't work outside of the office, but they travel around. Yeah, true story.
Only an Indian can make a decision like that. Only an Indian department.
Very corrupt
people.
Compare fucking idiot Australian heading it.
Is this, as I keep going back, is this all part of the White Hat's plan to help wake more people up?
There's got to be a queue. There's got to be a queue post about this somewhere.
Well, there is, isn't there?
Oh, Lord.
You can't tell people, you've got to show
them. That's the truth. Well, speaking of that, and we're running a bit long in the tooth, so I just want to get to point out one thing. We all know and have heard the journalist before. We grew up, hearing about journalists, seeing them on the TV, seeing their bio. If you're into newspapers and reading, and you particularly like the way some, you'd see a byline that said, the journalist and their name. Well, it seems that journalism has taken a bit of a change, gentlemen, because now we have senior producers putting out news. So the question I have for you is, do we now no longer have journalists? We have producers in this age of quick fire, TikTok and, YouTube shorts, Facebook shorts. Sean, you're the TikToker here. Do you require a journalist or do you require a producer?
I think the days where there was integrity in journalism is long gone. I think producer is now probably the correct term, given that we're now living in the age of propaganda.
Yeah, producer of shit. Yep.
I agree totally, except it's not new. It's always been that way. It's just you can see it more now.
Project Mockingbird, that was around
72.
Yeah.
Yep.
They didn't get rid of it.
Yep.
They just changed the name.
Very good, very good. All right, gentlemen, I'm going to love you and leave you. But before we go...
Wait, I have a quick question for Tim.
I was going to say, before we go, I'm going to let Bear have his last say because he's always got something.
We actually have a quick question for Tim. Can you tell us, we're off grid here, and at the moment we're on so we've got some solar and a generator, but what's the best generator, and then in combination with your hydrogen system, what do you recommend?
Well, what size generator are you running at the moment, Bear?
It's about a 12
kilowatt?
12 kVA.
12 kVA, yep.
Yeah.
Okay, so that'd be like a 3-cylinder, 4-cylinder?
It's a Yanmar.
Yeah.
Yanmar, okay.
Yeah.
Yep. And are you running that, so you've got some solar, but you run the generator of a night to back up the batteries or whatever?
Yeah, basically when the batteries get down to 60%, the generator kicks in and then brings it up to, full.
Okay.
Which is at the moment.
If it's a Yanmar and it's a 4-cylinder, I'm assuming it would be probably a 3 or a 4-cylinder, probably a 4-cylinder. Yanmar's very good engine. They're fairly efficient. And if you were to put a hydrogen unit on that, you would expect it to save probably about 20-odd%.
20%?
Wow, right, okay.
Wow.
We got in Brisbane, we've got Kubota 3-cylinder engines saving 32%.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Wow.
Right. So,
and
yeah.
If Bruce needed to look at a bigger system, to expand this place and then go to a bigger generator, what do you recommend? Is a gas generator or
use this? Oh, no, look, don't do gas because they're doing the same with everything. The price just goes up and up and up and up. You'd be better off if you're going to go to a bigger generator. In a generator, it's a bit easier than on a truck or anything like that, but you can get some really good alternative biofuels. I know a lot of people have had bad experiences with biofuel, but you can get good biofuel. And then, again, the hydrogen still works on it. And the hydrogen unit you put on the little Yanmar to what you would put on, say, to a 6-cylinder, say, Cummins engine, that's burning, say, 25 litres an hour or something like that, a fairly big beast. The same hydrogen unit would work on both.
Oh, right. Okay. So you just swap it over.
Yeah. Nice.
Yep.
That's very cool. That's good to know.
It's a nice thing about Tim's unit. It can go with you wherever you go.
Absolutely.
I do like that.
Change it, swap it out. I had a bloke today ask me how long do they last. I said, I don't know. None of them have ever broke down. We've only been doing it 18 years.
Yeah.
There we go. All right.
So guys, I'm gonna play another one of Tim's songs on the way out because he has been a prolific songwriter in the last couple of weeks or so. So I'll hit play. In fact, I've got to try and share it first. So let me do that and find the right friggin'. There we go. That's the one I want. And with a bit of luck, it'll start playing when I hit play. We'll have a quick chat at the end of it to find out just how creative you've been with all of this.
Thanks, Carl.
It's going well so far, isn't it? Have I clicked this? I have. Hang on a minute. I
think AI for intelligence has already taken over.
Shut up. Here we go.
Catchy.
No.
It's got a good beat.
Yeah, I love it. Not hearing it, Carl.
Oh, aren't you?
No,
No.
no sound. Did you hit the sound little button on the screen?
Yeah, I did. I
Hmm.
did. It says it's playing.
Oh, it's
It's
But
playing.
hang on,
playing.
I'll remove it.
The picture, yeah.
Hang on. Hang
It's
on.
for
Hang
Destiny.
on. I'll stop that.
It's done it, Jim.
I'll take it. Bloody hell. Stop that. I'll remove this and try and start it again. And if that fails,
Do what
then
you did with the other one.
we'll just have to have another attempt tomorrow. Let me put that up. That up.
For us.
That. Hey.
Still nothing.
Got nothing? Right. I think I might be overloading the bandwidth a bit with everything happening. So that could be the problem. So what I'll do is I'll post that up tomorrow. There is a link which I can post into the chat. I did earlier, I think, but I'll put in again for the track we played earlier from Tim, 10 Million Aussie Hearts. I'll poke that back into the chat again now. And don't forget to, with Sean's Freedom of Information request, email your local member, quote, FOI 23/296, and inquire as to anything about it. And if you want to go and have a listen to Tim's other song, I've just posted that up in the chat, and I will post a link to this one, which I was trying to play as well. I'll push that into the chat as well. All right. Delightful. Gentlemen, thank you very much for your time on a Friday night. And Sean, if we can help further with your Freedom of Information requests, please let us know. Keep up the good work for Sputnik or whatever other Russian joint you're working for this week. And we'll catch up soon.
Thanks, Carl.
Cheers, mate. The Galactic Larrikins, love your work. You boys go off, tear down trees, build roads, and be kings of the mountain like I only know you two could be.
Thanks, trendsetters. See you later.
See you later, guys. Bye.
And Mr. Dwyer, thank you very much for your time tonight. I know you were very busy with grandfatherly duties prior to your arrival, so
yes,
thank
you for inviting me on, and hope whatever little input I had was helpful to somebody.
People love it when you come on, and of course, if you are interested in Tim's hydrogen unit, email him h2@vofhq.com, and you'll get a little bit of a deal where we get a little bit of a deal out of it too. So if you are interested in improving your mileage, getting better torque, better bloody everything is the only way I can describe what the hydrogen unit has done for this vehicle. Better everything, and mileage. I can't effervesce enough about your creation, Tim. Thank you very much.
Thanks,
and if people want to use it and explore the different avenues for its use, then h2@vofhq.com. Give your lovely wife a kiss for me. And I should point out at the start of the show, I said I've got a headache. I've had a headache all day, and I've been walking around thinking, where the bloody hell are my X39s? And just as I started the show, I glanced to my right and found them up against a window here. Somebody asked in the show about halfway through, I said, oh, look, I've had this shocking headache all day. I'll put this patch on. My headache will be gone before 7 o'clock. That was 16 minutes to 7. I never looked at, and I haven't thought about it again until I saw a thing in the chat. My headache's gone. So, yeah.
You can't beat X39, mate. It's a corker.
It's a wonderful, wonderful thing. And if you are interested in X39, folks, that's the link down the bottom there, lifewave.com/VOF/enrollments/packs. And we get a little bit back from LifeWave if you decide to try those patches. They work for me. They work for Tim. They work for Corinne. I have met a couple of people they don't work for, and that's really tragic. I don't know why. Some people's bodies are different. Tim and I have talked about it many times. We don't know why. It's sad and unfortunate when it happens, but by God, when it does work for you and you've been in chronic pain for years, it is a truly life-changing moment. And
Yeah.
I've got an inbox full of people who tell me just what a huge difference these X39 patches have made since they've tried them and discovered them through the program. And they wouldn't have discovered them through the program, Tim, if you hadn't slapped one on the back of my neck one day in Adelaide while we were doing speeches and I was complaining of a headache. So Thank you, mate.
You're welcome, and everybody else as well. So let's live long, live well, and give them heaps.
Absolutely. All right, mate. Give your lovely wife a kiss from me, and look forward to seeing you soon.
Righto. Thanks, Carl. You too, mate. Take care.
Cheers, mate. The wonderful Tim Dwyer, and questions for him on his H2 unit, h2@vofhq.com. That will get to him every time. If you're heading out over the weekend, folks, have a great one. My plan today, as many of you would have been aware, was to head off to Brisbane and head into Ainslie, catch up with them. Unfortunately, the day being what it was, didn't happen. I will be going on Monday, and then I'm going to be trying to head down to Byron Bay, if not on Monday, then early in the week, to have a look at how we can spend some Byron bobs. If you don't know what a Byron bob is, Ainslie Bullion have put out a 1/10 of an ounce silver round. It's worth a bit over $7, and you can use it to buy all sorts of good things in communities right across Australia. But it has been christened the Byron Bob because Byron Bay has really adopted it. So we're going to go down and see just how well it's been adopted, because at the end of the day, we want to fight to maintain control of our own wealth. Centralized digital banking can only be the death of us. Why on earth would any government want to introduce a CBDC? Why on earth would any peoples of any country accept a CBDC when the people wanting to introduce it can't answer questions about it?
For why? What problem is it going to solve?
Look, what's it for? It's to keep track with the reality of how we'll purchase and save and do our work with our goods. This is about being a modern economy that recognises how our citizens, want to do business, but that it throws up a number of challenges that you'd want to overcome before you decided to proceed.
What's this CBDC for? Why? What problem?
Wrong button. What is the CBDC for? And the bloke in charge of rolling it out can't actually tell you. Can't give you a good reason. Goes to show, folks, not all the dickheads reside on the roads. Have a good weekend.
You let one ant stand up to us, then they all might stand up. Those puny little ants outnumber us 100 to 1. And if they ever figure that out, there goes our way of life. It's not about food. It's about keeping those ants in line. That's why we're going back. Does anybody else want to stay? Let's ride!